Hey everybody, it's Charlie. So I got a lot of requests to do a video for Umbrella Academy, so I'll explain the ending, and there's a lot of X-Men Easter eggs, because a lot of this is spun out of like a very misfit version of the X-Men. The story of Season 1 also largely parallels the Dark Phoenix storyline from the X-Men comics, which is funny because we have X-Men Dark Phoenix with Sophie Turner coming out later this year. Bringing it all back around for Kitty Pryde Ellen Page. If you're brand new to my channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos, and obviously, spoiler warning for Umbrella Academy Season 1, because we'll be talking about all the really specific plot beats and Easter eggs. So at the end of the season, they've discovered that Vanya, number 7, has powers, whereas she kind of grew up as the Meg of the family, like Family Guy Meg, always treated as a second-class citizen, they always dump on her. The brothers and sisters didn't know because their father hid it from them. You learn in the flashbacks that because her father was so afraid of how much power she had, she was like the Dark Phoenix of the family, he started giving her pills, quote-unquote, to help her. That suppressed her powers, and she sort of had this mental block that just made her forget that she ever had them. So that's why as an adult, she has no memory of ever being that powerful. The other critical piece of this that pushes her over the edge is Harold Peabody, who turns out to really be Harold Jenkins, someone who was born at the same time as all these other metas by coincidence, but he was just born a normal person. His mother died in childbirth. His father became this abusive alcoholic. So because he felt like he had a connection to all these metas, like, oh, I was born at the same time, maybe I secretly have powers too. He became sort of a syndrome type person when they laughed him out of the academy. So they treated him a little bit like they treated Vanya, aka like Meg from Family Guy. So he felt a kinship to her, like, hey, you're just like me, you're an outsider. Then he learned her secret when he got those journals. Then because he was part of the original timeline, he just wanted to destroy the academy. He wasn't about destroying the world. That was all because of the second timeline. So his whole plan was to get rid of all of her brothers and sister. That was it. But then of course, as you saw, things went completely off the rails when she kills him. The story of Season 1 is like this very identifiable X-Men style story where you have an outsider that's driven away by the actions of the family. They realize that, then try to help her and bring her back into the fold so that they can heal and deal with all their dysfunction. Pretty standard fare for an X-Men style story. That is essentially the story of X-Men Dark Phoenix. Jean Grey being manipulated by outside forces, being driven away from the group, the X-Men not dealing with it, a whole bunch of people dying as a result of all these mistakes. Then Umbrella Academy's big departure from that story is the big time travel twist at the end of this. Time travel also a really big mechanic of the season because it's number 5 that learns about the apocalypse and tries to do things to avoid it. But the big antagonist that you saw Cha-Cha and her partner working for, those are the Temps. They're basically like time cops, although they're a little bit sinister because they were trying to preserve the apocalypse. No matter what happened, they would always try to bring it about in a different way, which is why their boss said, no matter what you do, you must protect Vanya now. But because at different points in the season, because number 5 was changing the timeline, the way the apocalypse happened change, the Temps were trying to stay one step behind him to ensure that no matter what those changes were, that they would still get that apocalypse. When number 5 jumps forward and sees the first version of the apocalypse in the original timeline, he just finds the mansion in a pile of rubble and all the team members are dead. So then he goes back, they change things, they still get the apocalypse, but this time they cause the apocalypse because they try to kill Vanya. So that's actually a really important idea. It'd be like trying to kill Jean Grey to stop the Phoenix Force. The Phoenix Force would just jump into someone else's body and you'd be no better off than you were before. And you would have killed a family member. So the lesson here, as they realize, like they're all standing here like, no, we have a better idea. We're going to try and jump back in time and fix her, like the present day version of Vanya, so that this never happens in the future. So if it wasn't clear, when they're going around the circle and they look like they're turning young, that's more of a subconscious thing. Like they're going back to the beginning, they're being a family again like they were not during the first timeline. So when they show up again during Season 2, they will still be adults, but the plot will turn a lot more on time travel with them jumping around trying to change the timeline. And the whole idea being that, ultimately no matter which adventures that they have and how many different things that they do, will this moment still wind up happening at the end of the series? Sort of like the Flash Future newspaper, we try to make a whole bunch of changes to the timeline through 5, 6, 7 seasons of the show. Will this moment still happen no matter what we change? So even though it seems like Cha-Cha dies in that giant explosion, remember they're going back in time, they're going to change the timeline again, meaning that when they go back, the Temps agency that's after them will still be around, they'll still be an antagonist. But if you haven't read the comic book, there is a volume 2. They did volume 1 for the story of season 1, so it stands to reason that they could do volume 2 for season 2, or they could jump forward and do season 3, or they could combine a couple comic book storylines. The other really big villain that they could bring forward is Dr. Terminal, and he does appear a little bit during volume 1, but he's a much bigger character during volume 3. Volume 2 of the comic is just called Dallas, and it mostly revolves around number 5, the time traveler's involvement in the Kennedy assassination. It trades on a lot of tropes of American history. It's very time travel heavy. Like at one point, they're fighting this giant statue of Abraham Lincoln that's brought to life. But because you're jumping around in time, you do get to bring back Reginald Hargreaves. So even though he's dead in present day, he is a big part of Volume 2. Volume 3 is called Hotel Oblivion, and that's sort of like this otherworldly prison that Reginald Hargreaves created to put Dr. Terminal in, and he vows to come back and destroy the world. So later in the comic series, he goes from being a villain to being a really big supervillain. They could bring him forward towards the end of season 2. I don't know exactly what their plan is going to be. But overall, I thought they did a good job of adapting volume 1 of the comic book. It's called the Apocalypse Suite, and the Apocalypse Suite is the music that she's playing at the end where she's causing the apocalypse. So that's why the violin is so important for her ability. If you're not really sure how her ability works, she just has the ability to turn sound waves into pure energy, which is why the violin is her main weapon. So that's what's happening when she's immobilizing them with that white lightning. And the second reason why they cause the apocalypse, when she gets shot by her sister, and it causes her to misfire, and this giant bolt of energy shoots and hits the moon, causing it to break apart, and that just sort of compounds the problem. But again, the message is very clear. You work together as a family, heal the dysfunction, try to fix her, get her the mental help that she needs so that she can be a productive member of the group, and they can go on fighting whatever next threat comes along together. The funny thing too is they almost did this exact same plot on the Flash TV show in this week's episode, where Nora has the ability to rewind time, and she just keeps doing it over and over again, trying to figure out a way out of her situation. But just like Umbrella Academy, she realizes that she can't do this alone. You have to come together as a group to do things together. Everyone is more powerful together than apart, so that'll probably be a theme going into season 2, where there'll be an even bigger threat a la Dr. Terminal, or if they want to turn the Temps agency into a much bigger thing, because some of those characters are actually pretty interesting. If you're a big fan of Gerard Way's comic book, then you also probably got a lot of Doom Patrol vibes, because he's also been writing Doom Patrol. They're very much a team of misfits in the vein of Umbrella Academy, so they largely inspired the Umbrella Academy comic book, but also a very dysfunctional version of the X-Men. Group of really messed up kids trying to be a family together, dealing with all their problems. They went way over the top though, because it's Netflix and you can do anything you want. There's no kind of censorship issues, so obviously they tried to have a lot of fun with that idea. Like, this isn't something that you would see on network television. But I thought the effects were great, and the talking chimp Pogo, he was great too. Like, sometimes you just don't know until you actually see it. But whatever special effects they used to create his performance, whether it was a practical suit or whether it was motion capture like Rocket Raccoon and all the Guardians of the Galaxy and the Avengers movies. But as for an actual season 2, they haven't made any announcements yet. There hasn't been any official teasers or anything. So if you have any big questions about the series or where things are headed, just leave them in the comments below. Netflix has a lot of really cool stuff coming later this year. They have the Witcher TV series. I don't think we're going to get a trailer for that for a while though, but I will do videos for The Witcher when it gets here, just because it is sort of my milieu, because I do so much Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings and all that big fantasy stuff. So while you wait for everything, click here for my brand new Avengers Infinity War trailer video, and click here for my brand new Game of Thrones Season 8 video. Thank you so much for watching. Everybody stay awesome. I'll see you guys tonight.